Now we got our editor set up, and we, even before that, wrote our first HTML code, which leads to this page. And of course, this is great, it's our first page, but the content of this page is not amazing yet. This is of course not a realistic website. We typically want to build more complex things. Nonetheless, this of course is our first important step. Now, let's take a closer look at this HTML code though, because understanding this code and how it works and how you would add more content, that of course all is extremely important to become a web developer. Now, HTML is a markup language, and that means that it is in the end a language that's there to add extra annotation to content which we might have on our page. Just as we might make content bold or turn content into a title or a subtitle in a Word document, we also typically want to assign different meanings to the different pieces of content we have on our web page. Because on a web page, we also have titles and subtitles and paragraphs of text and links and images and buttons, and we describe our content with HTML. That's why it's called a markup language. HTML is a language for adding extra meaning to our content, hence describing our content. HTML instructs the browser about our content, its structure, and its meaning. And we do provide extra meaning and structure to our content with those angle bracket things here. We write HTML code always like this. And this overall thing here, this entire code snippet here, is called a so-called HTML element. So let's now understand these HTML elements and how they are written and structured and what their different building blocks are. As I just said, this entire thing which we wrote is a so-called HTML element. And those elements as a whole tell the browser what our content is and which kind of content it is. We do inform the browser about the type of content with help of those angle bracket things which are called HTML tags. So every HTML element, which is the entire thing, has such HTML tags which describe which kind of content is stored inside of that element. And that's therefore the part between the tags, the element content. So an HTML element is made up of HTML tags and the element content. Now, you can't pick any arbitrary tags, and I'll come back to that later, but instead there is a clearly standardized list of available tags which you as a web developer can use. For example, the H1 tag stands for heading 1 and marks a main title on your website. There are other tags for describing other types of content, but that's something we're going to dive into later. Now, for those tags, you might of course notice that these two tags don't look exactly the same. The second tag has this / after the opening angle bracket. The first tag does not have that. That's the case because we have two different kinds of tags for every HTML element. We have an opening and a closing tag. And we have a different syntax here, as it's called. We have the / on the closing tag to tell those two tags apart for the browser, so for the computer in the end. And we need this differentiation because we want to tell the browser where an element starts and where it ends. And if we would be using exactly the same tag, so both times without the / for example, then the browser wouldn't know if the second time we use it marks the end of an element or already the start of another element. That's why we have a clear distinction here between opening and closing tag. And we therefore have opening tag, content, closing tag. And that all together forms the HTML element. Now, if we take a closer look at those tags, we can also split those up even more. There we have those angle brackets, less than and greater than, And between those angle brackets, we have the so-called element name. And that's another official term which you might want to memorize. So in this case, h1 is the element name, hello world is the element content. Together with the angle brackets, the element name forms the HTML tag. And when it comes to those tags, we have the opening tag and the closing tag, which looks just like the opening tag but has this extra /. And that all together forms the HTML element, which has the hello world content and instructs the browser about which kind of content this is. In case of the h1 tag, it tells the browser that this is a main heading, a main title on the website. But that, of course, brings us to another important question. Which HTML elements exist? How do we know which elements we can use?